I used to believe I had a solid marriage, until the night I saw my drunk wife tumble out of another man's car, laughing like she hadn't just crushed everything I thought we had. Sure, our marriage wasn't perfect, but whose is? I never imagined I'd be the kind of man who'd come home one night only to find his wife staggering out of a stranger's vehicle, reeking of alcohol and reckless choices. That evening had started like any other. I was drained from a long day at work, looking forward to nothing more than a cold beer and maybe a movie before bed. But the moment I pulled into our driveway, something felt off. The porch light was on, casting a weak glow over the yard, yet the house itself was eerily silent. That's when I noticed it, a silver sedan idling at the curb. I watched as the driver's side door opened, and out stepped a man, tall, well-dressed, and entirely too at ease standing in front of my house. He strode around the car and opened the passenger door. And that's when she appeared. Emily, my wife. She nearly lost her balance stepping out, catching herself against the car at the last second. The guy reached out, his hand settling on her waist, lingering just a little too long. She giggled, slurring something I couldn't quite hear, then turned toward the house, completely oblivious to the fact that I was sitting in my car just a few feet away. My grip tightened on the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My heartbeat pounded in my ears, a sickening mix of fury and disbelief swelling inside me. The guy leaned against his car, watching her fumble with her keys, a smug smirk playing on his lips, like he'd just won some kind of unspoken contest. Then, without a care in the world, he got back in his car and drove off, leaving me there in the dark, watching my wife stumble through our front door as if nothing had happened. I stepped out of my car slowly, my body moving on instinct while my mind raced. What the hell had I just witnessed? Who was that guy? And why did it look like Emily had done this before? Inside, I found her sprawled on the couch, a half-empty bottle of wine resting between her legs. Her glassy eyes flicked up to me, and she gave a lazy smile, completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "Hey, babe," she slurred, lifting the bottle in a half-hearted toast. "Didn't hear you come in." I stepped closer, my voice dangerously calm. "Who was that, Emily?" She blinked, momentarily confused. "Huh? The guy who just dropped you off. The one you were clinging to like he was your damn prom date." Her face lost its color in an instant, and for the first time, I saw it, that flicker of panic, the moment she realized she'd been caught. "It's not what you think," she blurted out, sitting up too fast. "He's just a friend. He gave me a ride home, that's all." "A friend?" I let out a dry, humorless laugh. "A friend who stares at you like that? Who lets you drape yourself all over him?" She swallowed hard, gripping the wine bottle like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. "I was just drunk, okay? He was being nice. That's it." I stared at her, feeling something inside me crack. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to convince myself I was just overreacting. That I was seeing things that weren't there. But then, I saw it. Her phone. It was sitting on the coffee table, screen glowing, a message thread still open. At the top was a name I didn't recognize. Dylan. My pulse hammered as I picked up the phone before she could react. The most recent message made my stomach twist. "You home safe? Wish I could have stayed longer. Tonight was perfect." I lifted my eyes to hers. She was frozen, her face pale. "Emily." My voice barely came out above a whisper. "What the hell is this?" Panic flashed in her eyes as she lunged for the phone, but I yanked it away, my fingers scrolling through the thread while my entire world came crashing down around me. The messages stretched back for weeks. Flirty exchanges. Inside jokes. Late-night confessions. And then, the photos. God, the photos. One of her, wearing the very same sweater she had on now, taken in a dimly lit bar. A place I had never been. A life I hadn't even known she was living. My stomach churned. My hands trembled. How long? I finally asked, my voice shaking. She buried her face in her hands. It's not. How long? I roared, my patience snapping like a brittle thread. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she shook her head. I don't know, she whispered. Liar. Before I could press her any further, the doorbell rang. Emily flinched at the sound. I turned toward the door, my gut twisting, warning me that whatever was coming next would only make this worse. I swung the door open to find Claire, our neighbor, standing on the porch. She looked uneasy, shifting from foot to foot like she wasn't sure if she should even be here. I wasn't sure if I should say anything, she started hesitantly. But I saw Emily earlier. She was dropped off by a guy in a silver car. I just thought you should know. I closed my eyes for half a second, forcing myself to stay calm. My jaw clenched. Thanks, Claire, I muttered, my voice tight. She gave me a sympathetic nod before turning and walking back to her house. I stood there for a moment, letting the night air cool the fire burning in my chest. Then I turned back to Emily, who was now trembling. So, Dylan drove you home, I said as I stepped closer. And you didn't think to mention it? Her breath hitched. It's not like that, she pleaded. We were just talking. That's all. Bullshit. That was all it took to break her. She collapsed into sobs, burying her face in her hands. I made a mistake, she choked out. A mistake. That word echoed in my head, hollow, meaningless. This wasn't a mistake. A mistake was forgetting to pick up milk at the store. A mistake was locking your keys in the car. This was months of sneaking around. Of calculated deception. Of lies so deeply woven into our life that I hadn't even seen them unraveling right in front of me. My fists clenched at my sides, my entire body shaking with the force of holding myself back. I needed proof, real proof. Because whatever she was admitting to now was only the tip of the iceberg. And if she thought she could cry her way out of this, she was about to find out just how wrong she was. I stood there, staring at her as she sobbed, the weight of her own lies finally bearing down on her. But I wasn't going to let her crocodile tears cloud my judgment. I had seen enough. Still gripping her phone, I scrolled further. The messages with Dylan stretched back months. Flirty texts. Inside jokes. Late-night confessions about how much they understood each other. My jaw tightened until it hurt. The timestamps lined up too perfectly with the nights she'd told me she was working late. The nights she claimed she was out with her girlfriends. Every single excuse had been a lie. You were never at work, were you? I asked, my voice disturbingly calm given the chaos raging inside me. She lifted her tear-streaked face to meet my eyes. Nathan, please. Were you? I snapped, my voice sharp enough to make her flinch. She hesitated. Then, finally, she shook her head. A cold, bitter laugh escaped me. So where were you then? She buried her face in her hands again. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Try the truth for once. She hesitated again, and that hesitation told me everything. Whatever she was about to say wouldn't be the full story, it would only be what she thought I already knew. That was the thing about liars. They never gave you the whole truth unless they had to. I dropped her phone onto the couch beside her. You disgust me. Nathan, I swear. Save it. I turned away, my mind spinning. I needed proof. Something undeniable. Because right now, she'd only admit to harmless texts. Maybe a drunken mistake. But I knew better. It was never just that. It was always more. My hands were shaking as I pulled my own phone from my pocket. If she thought I was just going to roll over and accept this, she had another thing coming. I walked out of the living room, leaving her sobbing on the couch. I needed air. I needed space. But more than anything, I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal. And I knew exactly how to find out. An hour later, I sat in my car, parked outside a nondescript brick building a few miles from our house. The neon sign on the door was simple. Lawson and Associates, Private Investigations. I never thought I'd be the kind of man who needed to hire a private investigator. That was the kind of thing you saw in movies. Something desperate men did when they couldn't accept the truth. But here I was. And I was about to learn just how deep this rabbit hole went. But I wasn't desperate. I was just done being played for a fool. Inside, the office smelled of stale coffee and old paperwork. A receptionist led me down a short hallway to a small, dimly lit room where a man in his 50s sat behind a cluttered desk. The moment I walked in, his sharp eyes scanned me, sizing me up in an instant. "Mr. Dawson?" he asked, standing to shake my hand. "Yeah," I said, gripping his hand firmly before sitting down. "Call me Nathan." He nodded, leaning back in his chair. "So, Nathan, what can I do for you?" I exhaled slowly, still trying to wrap my head around everything. "I think my wife is cheating on me," I admitted. Then I corrected myself. "No, I know she is. I just don't know how deep it goes." His expression didn't change. "You want confirmation?" "I want proof. I want names, locations, dates, times. I want pictures. I want to know everything." He gave a slow nod and pulled a notepad closer. "Do you have a name?" I clenched my fists. "Dylan," I said through gritted teeth. "I don't know his last name yet, but I have his phone number from her messages." I slid my phone across the desk, showing him the thread. He glanced at the screen, his face unreadable. "I can work with this," he said simply. I hesitated before adding, "I also want access to her deleted messages, if that's possible. I need to know what she's been hiding." He nodded again. "I'll run a digital recovery on her phone. If there's anything she's deleted, texts, photos, we'll find it." I swallowed hard and forced myself to stay focused. "How long will this take?" "A few days for initial surveillance," he said. "A week at most to get a full picture." A week. I didn't know how the hell I was going to make it that long, knowing what I knew now. But I had no choice. If I confronted her with half-truths, she'd find a way to twist them. I needed undeniable proof. I shook his hand, sealing the deal, then walked out of that office feeling like a different man. When I got home, Emily was still curled up on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her like she was the victim in all this. The second she heard me come in, she sat up, her eyes red and swollen. "Nathan, please," she begged. "Can we talk?" I stood there for a long moment, my chest tight with anger. "What's there to talk about, Emmy?" I asked coldly. "You're only sorry because you got caught." Her lip trembled. "That's not true." "Then why didn't you tell me about him before?" She hesitated, her mouth opening and closing as she scrambled for an answer that wouldn't make her look worse. But there wasn't one. I scoffed. "That's what I thought." She wiped at her face, fresh tears spilling over. "I love you, Nathan. I never meant to hurt you." "Yeah." I shot back. "You sure as hell didn't mean to stop, either." She flinched like I'd slapped her. I dragged a hand through my hair, exhaling hard. "Just tell me one thing, Emmy. How far did it go?" She hesitated. That split second of hesitation told me everything. "Tell me the damn truth." She sucked in a shaky breath. We kissed." I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "Kissed," I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. She nodded quickly, desperate for me to believe her. "That's all." I swear. I stared at her, letting the silence stretch between us, making her sit with the weight of her own words. You're lying, I finally said, my voice deadly quiet. Nathan, I saw the way he looked at you, Emmy. The way you looked at him. That wasn't just a kiss. That was something more. More tears. More trembling hands. More pathetic attempts to backtrack. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. Too late for that. I turned toward the closet, grabbed a blanket, and tossed it onto the couch. You're sleeping here tonight. Her face crumpled. Nathan, please don't do this. I turned away, my voice flat. I don't even want to look at you right now. And with that, I walked upstairs, shutting the bedroom door behind me. Then, without hesitation, I locked it. Not because I was afraid of her. But because I needed a barrier between me and the woman who had just shattered my life. I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment, the lies, the excuses, the texts, the way she leaned into him. I had spent years building a life with this woman. Believing we were a team. And now, in the span of a single night, I realized I had been living in a house of cards. But I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. She thought I was just going to let this go. She had no idea what was coming. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Emily, stumbling out of that car. Dylan, leaning back with that smug grin, watching her like he owned her. The messages. The lies. The moments I thought were ours, now tainted, poisoned by her betrayal. By the time the first rays of sunlight slipped through the blinds, I was running on pure adrenaline. My body was exhausted, but my mind refused to shut down. I was done feeling sorry for myself. Now, I wanted the truth. Downstairs, I heard movement. Emily, probably hoping to talk before I left for work. Too bad for her. I had other plans. I stepped out of the bedroom and found her standing in the hallway, still wrapped in the same blanket I had thrown at her last night. Her eyes were swollen, dark circles under them making her look as wrecked as I felt. Nathan, she croaked, her voice raw. Can we? No. She flinched like I had slapped her. Please, she tried again. I don't want to lose you. I stared at her, and for a fleeting second, I almost believed she meant it. But then I remembered Dylan's text. Wish I could have stayed longer. She didn't care about losing me. She cared about losing the life I built for her. You already lost me, I said coldly. Her breath hitched. I'll do anything, Nathan. I swear. I'll fix this. I let out a slow breath, keeping my anger simmering just beneath the surface. If she truly wanted to fix this, she would have told me the truth from the start. Instead, I had to dig for it myself. Without another word, I grabbed my keys and walked out, leaving her standing there, broken. But not nearly as broken as she had left me. I spent the morning at a coffee shop, staring at my phone, waiting. At exactly 10 a.m., it buzzed. Lawson. We've got something, his voice came through the speaker. Meet me at my office in an hour. I tightened my grip around my coffee cup. I'll be there. When I stepped into Lawson's office, he didn't waste time. He gestured for me to sit, then slid a folder across the desk. I think this is what you were looking for, he said grimly. I opened it. The first photo made my stomach turn. Emily. With him. They were sitting at an outdoor cafe, leaning in close. Her hand rested on his forearm. It wasn't some casual coworker interaction. It wasn't innocent. I swallowed hard and flipped to the next photo. This one was worse. Dylan's car. The silver sedan I had seen the night before, parked outside a hotel. And Emily, stepping out of the passenger side. Smiling. Another photo. The timestamp read 2 weeks ago. Inside the hotel lobby, Dylan stood beside her, holding the door open. His hand rested on the small of her back. I slammed the folder shut. Lawson studied me carefully. "Do you need more?" I shook my head. My voice came out hollow. "No. This was enough. More than enough." The drive home was a blur. My grip tightened around the steering wheel, knuckles white. My mind raced through every possible excuse she might try to throw at me. Every lie she'd scramble to spin. But this time, she wasn't going to talk her way out of it. When I stepped through the front door, Emily was sitting on the couch, her phone clutched in both hands. The second she saw me, relief flashed across her face. "Nathan," she breathed, standing up like she was about to run to me. I held up the folder. She froze in place. The color drained from her face. "Sit down." She hesitated, then sank back onto the couch. I walked over, dropped the folder onto the coffee table, and flipped it open. One by one, I spread the photos in front of her. Her hands flew to her mouth. Where did you get these?" she whispered. I scoffed. "That's not the question you should be asking." My voice was like ice. "The real question is, how could you do this to me?" Tears welled in her eyes. "Nathan, You lied to me," I cut her off, jabbing a finger at the first photo. "Every time you told me you were working late." I flipped to the next picture. "Every time you said you were out with the girls." I flipped to another. "Every time you kissed me, slept beside me, and made me believe everything was fine." Her lips trembled, but she didn't say a word. There was nothing left to say. I had the truth. And now, it was time for her to face it. "Every time you said you were out with the girls." I flipped to another photo. "Every time I kissed you goodnight, thinking I was the only one." She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking, but I didn't stop. I pointed at the hotel picture, the one that made my stomach turn. "This. Tell me what happened here." She shook her head violently, her hands trembling. I don't. Tell me." My voice was sharp, unforgiving. She crumbled. "We slept together," she choked out, barely able to get the words past her lips. Everything inside me stilled. I had already known. I had seen the signs, pieced it together. But hearing her say it aloud. It was like a knife plunging straight into my gut, twisting until I could hardly breathe. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay in control. "How long?" She hesitated, like she still thought she could protect herself from the truth. But then she saw the look in my eyes, and whatever resistance she had left shattered. 5 months, she whispered. I closed my eyes, swallowing back the bile rising in my throat. 5 months. All those nights she came home late. The times she kissed me, told me she loved me. The mornings she woke up beside me, after spending the night with him. I opened my eyes and stared at the woman I had once loved. "Get on your knees," I said, my voice void of emotion. She blinked, confused. "What?" "You heard me. Get on your knees." And she did. Without thinking. Still crying, still desperate to fix something that couldn't be fixed. I stared down at her, and for the first time, I felt nothing. Not love. Not heartbreak. Just cold, clear certainty. "I want you to listen carefully," I said, my voice steady, controlled. "Because I'm only going to say this once." She nodded frantically, eyes wide, waiting for me to tell her what she could do to undo the damage she had caused. "There's no saving this," I said. "No begging, no bargaining, no, I'm sorry. You made your choice." Her sobs grew louder, her hands clutching at my jeans. "Nathan, please." I pulled away. "I already talked to a lawyer," I continued, my tone ice cold. Your access to our joint account? Gone. My name on this house? Gone. You want Dylan? You can have him. Her body shook, her sobs turning desperate. No, no, no. Please. I'll cut him off, I swear. I'll quit my job, I let out a bitter laugh. Now you wanna quit? Now you wanna change? Too little, too late, Emmy. I grabbed my keys and turned toward the door. Where are you going? She cried. I didn't look back. Somewhere you're not. And with that, I walked out. I didn't know where I was headed yet. Anywhere was better than here. I kept driving, not stopping until I was halfway across town. The city lights blurred past me in streaks of red and white. My hands were clenched so tightly around the steering wheel that my knuckles ached, but I didn't care. The rage hadn't faded. If anything, it had settled into something worse. A cold, empty numbness. Emily's sobs. Her pathetic excuses. Her desperate pleas for forgiveness, they echoed in my head. She had spent 5 months betraying me. Lying to my face. Sneaking around with that smug bastard Dylan while I worked my ass off to build a life for us. And now, because she got caught, she wanted to fix it. No. There was no fixing this. I pulled into a gas station parking lot and shut off the engine. The quiet felt suffocating. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Another call from Emily. I let it ring. A few seconds later, a text popped up. Nathan, please answer. We need to talk. I'll do anything. Just come home. I laughed, a hollow, humorless sound. Home. That place wasn't home anymore. I powered off my phone and leaned back against the headrest, my mind spinning. It wasn't enough. Telling her it was over. Cutting her off financially. It wasn't enough. I needed her to feel it. The humiliation. The betrayal. The absolute devastation she had put me through. I needed revenge. I spent the night at a cheap motel, my mind racing with possibilities. By morning, I had a plan. Step 1, expose her. Emily had spent months sneaking around behind my back. Lying to our friends. Lying to our families. She had made me look like a fool while she played house with Dylan. She wasn't walking away clean. Not a chance in hell. I scrolled through my phone, pulling up the group chat with our closest friends. My heart pounded as I typed out the message. Hey everyone, just wanted to share something important. Emily and I are separating. Found out she's been having an affair with a guy from work for 5 months. Thought you all should know. Before I could second guess myself, I attached a few of the photos the investigator had given me, the ones of her and Dylan at the hotel, the one of them holding hands at the cafe. Then, with a deep breath, I hit send. My phone blew up almost instantly. Tyler, what the hell? Rachel, oh my God, Nathan. I'm so sorry. James, wait. Mark. The guy from her office? Tyler, I knew something was off about her, dude. I'm so sorry. I ignored the messages. Let them talk. Let them see exactly who she was. Step 2, take everything from her. That morning, I met with my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Teresa. She had already filed the divorce paperwork, but now, I wanted to make sure Emily walked away with nothing. I want her out of the house, I said, my voice cold and unwavering. Teresa nodded. Given the evidence you have, we can push for an at-fault divorce. If she's been using marital assets to fund the affair, hotels, trips, gifts, we can argue she's not entitled to anything. Good, I said. Do it. She studied me for a moment. Nathan, I have to ask, is this about closure or revenge? I met her gaze without hesitation. Both. She didn't argue. She just got to work. Step 3, confront Dylan. That night, I parked outside Emily's office building and waited. I had already done my research. Dylan worked late on Thursdays. Sure enough, around 8:30 p.m., I saw him step out, strolling toward his silver sedan like he didn't have a care in the world. Like he hadn't spent the last 5 months screwing another man's wife. I got out of my car, slamming the door shut behind me. He barely had time to register my presence before I was standing in front of him. "Dylan," I said, my voice eerily calm. His eyes flickered with surprise, but then, just as quickly, he smirked. "Nathan. Didn't expect to see you here." That smug expression made my blood boil. "Yeah," I said. "Didn't expect me to find out either, did you?" His smirk faltered. "Look, man." I cut him off. "You knew she was married." He swallowed. "It wasn't. You knew." I took a step closer, forcing him to look me in the eye. "And you did it anyway." For a moment, I thought he might try to act tough. But then, I saw it, the flicker of panic as he glanced around the empty parking lot, realizing there was no one here to save him. "Look," he said, his voice weaker now. "I didn't mean for things to get serious. It just happened." I laughed. Actually laughed. "That's the best you've got?" "It just happened." He opened his mouth again, but I didn't let him speak. "I hope she was worth it," I said coldly. "Because she's your problem now." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, looking exactly like what he was. A coward. When I got home, Emily was waiting for me. She was still wearing the same clothes as yesterday, her face blotchy from crying. "Nathan," she whispered. "Please don't do this. I can't lose you." I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I had once loved. The woman who had destroyed everything we had. "You already did." I walked past her, heading straight for the bedroom. She followed, desperate now. "We can fix this," she pleaded. "I'll do therapy. I'll quit my job. I turned to face her, cutting her off. "You wanna fix this? Fine. Pack your bags." She froze. What? "You're leaving," I said. "The house is in my name now. You have until the end of the weekend to get out." Tears streamed down her face as she shook her head. "You can't do this. We built this life together." I let out a bitter laugh. "No. I built this life. You burned it to the ground." She broke then, collapsing to her knees, clutching at my jeans like she had the other night. "Please, Nathan," she sobbed. "I love you." I yanked my leg free. "No, Emily. You love yourself." I stared down at her, my voice void of emotion. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this." She crumpled in on herself, her sobs muffled against the carpet. I stood there, watching her, feeling nothing. For months, she had held all the power. Now, it was my turn. Sneaking around. Making a fool of me. Deciding when and where she wanted to be faithful. Not anymore. I grabbed a pillow and a blanket from the bed and tossed them onto the floor. "You can sleep here until you're gone." Emily looked up at me, her face full of despair. "Where am I supposed to go?" "Not my problem," I said coldly. "Maybe Dylan has room for you." And with that, I turned off the lights and climbed into bed, leaving her to drown in the consequences of her own choices. For the first time in months, I slept peacefully. The morning after I told Emily to leave, I woke to the sound of quiet sobs coming from the corner of the bedroom. I didn't react. Didn't turn to look at her. Didn't acknowledge that she had spent the night curled up on the floor like a stray dog left out in the rain. I didn't care. She made her bed with Dylan, for 5 months, in a hotel. Now, she could lie in it. I got up, got dressed, and left the house without a word. I had more important things to do. By noon, I was sitting in my lawyer's office, signing the final set of documents that would sever me from Emily for good. Teresa slid the last paper across the desk. Once you sign this, you're officially filing for divorce. Given the evidence we have, you'll keep the house, the car, and all major assets. She won't get a cent from you. I took the pen without hesitation. She's going to fight it, Teresa warned. She's desperate. I met her eyes. She can fight all she wants. She's already lost. With that, I signed my name. The ink dried, sealing the end of my marriage in sharp, black letters. No hesitation. No second thoughts. This was justice. When I got back home, Emily was pretending to pack. Her suitcase lay open on the bed, half full. But she wasn't moving. Just sitting there, staring at nothing. She looked up when I entered, her eyes bloodshot. Nathan? I ignored her, walked straight to the closet, and grabbed some of her clothes, tossing them into the suitcase. She flinched. I don't know where to go. Not my problem. Nathan, please, she whispered. I don't have anywhere else. My parents live out of state, and I can't go to Dylan's. I ended things with him. I scoffed. Oh, now you end it? Convenient. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away like her touch was poison. It was a mistake, she pleaded. I snapped. Stop calling it that. Her breath hitched. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. 5 months of sneaking around isn't a mistake, Emmy. It's a choice. She sobbed. I didn't mean to fall for him. I laughed, shaking my head. And yet you did. She wiped her tears away, anger flashing across her face. And what about you? She demanded. You just get to walk away like none of this meant anything. Like I meant nothing. I met her gaze, my voice steady. You meant something. Once. But not anymore. She inhaled sharply, as if the finality of my words had just hit her. I grabbed the suitcase, zipped it up, and wheeled it to the door. You have until Sunday. After that, I changed the locks. She sat there, shaking, her hands gripping the edge of the bed. You don't love me anymore, she whispered. I stared at her. The woman I had once promised forever to. The woman I had trusted with everything. No, I said. I don't. And for the first time in months, I felt free. By Sunday, Emily was gone. No goodbye. No note. Just gone. Like a bad chapter in my life finally closing. I didn't ask where she went. I didn't care. Instead, I spent the next few weeks reclaiming my life. I hit the gym, something I had neglected for too long. I reconnected with old friends. Real friends. The ones who had my back when everything fell apart. I poured myself into my work, finally able to focus without the weight of a crumbling marriage dragging me down. Of course, Emily tried to reach out. Calls. Texts. Emails filled with apologies, empty promises, desperate pleas for another chance. I ignored them all. Then, one day, I got a message from an unknown number. Dylan. I don't know what you told her, but she won't even talk to me anymore. Hope you're happy. I smiled. I was. Months passed. The divorce was finalized. The house was mine. My life was mine. One evening, I found an old wedding photo tucked away in a drawer. Emily and me, smiling, happy, clueless. I stared at it for a long moment, then tossed it in the trash. That life was over. And I was finally moving on.